It's a true story. That was what drew me to the film and the idea of making a ghost story. And I find ghost stories very frightening. I don't think of Winchester as a horror story. It's a ghost story in the really classic tradition of ghost stories. That film is so very suited to making ghost stories. But the fact that it was a ghost story with its feet in reality was what really drew me to it. You can visit the house; it still exists in San Jose. It's an extraordinary building to visit, and really you can walk through those rooms that Sarah Winchester built. She obviously was a real character. The Winchester rifle was obviously a very famous, armament. So it was the fact that it had its feet in reality.
And along with her idiosyncrasies, Sarah was also something of an inventor and a progressive thinker. What was your favourite thing that you uncovered about her?
Oh, that's very true. She was very inventive, and as well as building a very eccentric house, she actually built into the house elements that had never been seen before at the time. I remember she had some system of letting the people who were working for her know exactly where she was in which room. Of course, they had bells like that in other big houses, but she invented some system that was different or more complicated. But also she had a room for plants. She loved horticulture, she loved gardening, we have that in common. And she had a sort of a sort of conservatory with a sort of form of automatic watering system she had put in, and that was very advanced.
Jason Clarke has said he relished the earthquake scenes and getting down into the muck and grime with the Dame. How much did you enjoy collaborating with him?
He was a wonderful actor to work with. He was very, very... we did a lot of work before we even shot any of the footage on the film. We did a lot of work on the scripts, reading the script through, working on the scene by scene to make sure that each scene really, said what we wanted it to say. And he was fantastically contributive to that. And then on set, I have a very, very soft spot in my heart for anyone with an Australian accent anyway, any Australians. And he's a classic Aussie.
In the film, Dr. Price, who Jason plays, notes that fear only exists in your mind. Is there anything that you're afraid of, and have you had any supernatural experiences at all?
I've had supernatural experiences that maybe were all in my mind, I remember in one night in particular, actually, was when I was working in Stratford on Avon, and I would have to drive home late at night after the theatre, down dark country lanes. And and normally that never bothered me, although at the time I found it very frightening to walk past cemeteries. Just my imagination was dark. I could not walk past cemeteries at night. I don't mind now. Now I absolutely can. But anyway, I was driving home and suddenly, for absolutely no reason, I got really, really frightened. It was as if in the driving I'd entered into a zone of evil. It's the only way I can describe it. A kind of a zone of evil. And I'm a very rational person, and I can talk myself, and I'm very pragmatic, and I'm very down to earth, basically. And so I was trying to talk myself out of this because there was no logical reason for it whatsoever. And eventually I drove out of it. Basically, it was almost as if I'd drawn into a zone of evil, and then I drove out of it, and then I was okay. But it was so vivid and so strong that I've never forgotten it. It's funny, and I would say that's the closest I've really ever been to a real sort of feeling of something supernatural.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey You Guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yeah.
Nice.
Hey You Guys!